And you just want it as the radical tradition or the black radical tradition? Black radical tradition or just the radical tradition?
The radical tradition. I'm going to deconstruct the black radical
Got you.
tradition.
How you doing, brother? My bad. Stop, rock, scissors, paper, you know? Just let me know. You gotta leave after you get started, right?
Yep.
Everybody's phones off?
Yes, sir.
All right. Just count me down when we get close. We're gonna try to sound like a lot of people. And that's our challenge. Let's see how many people we can sound like. That's all that matters, you know.
Yep.
All right.
We'll have an audience tonight. And we got our audience in the Zoom and the YouTube. Be good.
What's the PAFM, Doc?
Pan-African Federalist Movement. It's for the United States of Africa.
Gotcha. Okay.
Brother Jume.
Mm-hmm.
This is the United States of Africa.
Okay.
Like it's still counting down and clicks and then viewers out here, but I just
Brother Kareem has the flu.
Oh, wow.
Brother
Okay.
Kareem has the flu.
Hmm.
Brother Carlton is still recuperating.
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, see that? Did you see?
So it'll have like a buffer, like little loading screen, like
Carlton is moving on.
it's crazy because it starts out saying the connection is smooth, like excellent.
Asante,
Yes, sir.
what do you think about the fires in LA?
Oh, you know.
Yeah, this viewer is swinging.
Brother and sister.
Right.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Appreciate you.
We're good to go?
Yes.
Welcome, Hotep. Good to see everybody. All right. All right. Welcome to the MKA Institute. And we are here in the spring of 2025. For those who are just tuning in, if nobody said it, you know, since the new year, happy new year, happy Afrocentric new year. And we have some wonderful opportunities for you to join with us at the MKA Institute, either online or in person, 5535 Germantown Avenue in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, for those that are just tuning in for the first time. Next up, after today, will be on January 26th. We'll gather to hear from Timothy Welbeck, and he's the director of Temple's Anti-Racism Center at Temple University, and his topic will be anti-racism in the Trump era. And yeah, that's a topic, you know. He might need a series, you know. Then on February 9th, Brother Tudaman is going to be talking about community organizing, and he's going to be discussing on the topic, the warring factions in Sudan. And then on February 23rd, Brother Jume Faye is going to be talking about the Foundation for the United States of Africa, and he's going to try to talk about doing that within the time frame between now and 2030. And on unique opportunity for just $50 is going to be an entire symposium held at the Institute with Dr. Ridley, Dr. Asante, Dr. Dove, Dr. Patricia Reed Merritt, and many others. But today we have a speaker that many of you might be familiar with. His name is on the building. And say to the young people, the measure of success is when you return to those who supported you when you were on your way up, and you take all those skills and access to resources, and you pour back into those communities and people that poured back into you. Until then, you have just achieved. You're not successful, because if you just take and leave and never come back and never give back, there's no success in that. It's actually betrayal. Brother Michael Kors. Shouts out to English black man, American Michael Kors. But that's how I look at it. If people, they're patient with you and they love you even when you're not lovable, and they understand that you have potential despite the fact you're not showing it at times, and they really just, believe in you and work hard to make you who you are. You don't just go out and buy a house on some island. He came back to the community and built an institution. So I'm very thankful for the man I'm introducing here today. And he's going to discuss the radical tradition. And he's going to offer some new insights, because oftentimes in our community, it's very important to understand the power of perspective. To have a new way of thinking about something that you've been engaged with your whole life sometimes could change the way that you understand your place in the world and your potential to make change in the world in an instant. So without further ado, I bring to you the namesake of this fine institution to discuss the radical tradition, Dr. Malefe Kete Asante. Show your love. All right. Oh, yes. It's okay.
No. I said hotel. Wow, this is amazing. This is truly a wonderful day, and I want to thank Dr. Jabali for his fine introduction. He is, of course, one of our outstanding thinkers and teachers, and he has done an incredible job actually working very hard to ensure that the correct perspective on information and knowledge get out to the people. So I'm just really pleased, and we're so happy to see all of you here today. One of the things that I am very, very thankful for, I just happened to stand up here and look out, and one of my former doctoral students is here, Dr. Suzuko Marakawa, and I'm just so happy to see her. To see her in the audience is very, very wonderful, and so it's a very, very nice to come back. We've had a wonderful program so far over the years, and now today we have a wonderful opportunity to have a conversation about something that is, I think, extremely important. And so I always greet the audience with a great fraternal spirit, because we are all in this together. There's nobody that is above anybody else. We are basically people who are fighting for the same things. And so because of that, it is a wonderful thing for me to be able to share with you and to express with you my thoughts and my concerns about the radical tradition. And I call it revitalizing the radical tradition. And I call it revitalizing the radical tradition for a very serious reason. We are in times right now that are different than sometimes that we've had before, but they're not. Let's put it this way: we have always had difficult times, but this particular time, there is also a technological, a political, autocratic spirit that is totally different than what we have experienced before. But one of the things that I know, and I know this actually because I recognize our strength as a people, is that we are resilient enough, and we are up for all struggles. And so we will know, we will understand the nuances of this particular struggle, hopefully, after I'm done. Now, let me start by saying that I'm going to interrogate, I'm going to question the entire notion of, well, I don't even, you see, I don't even use the word, I'm not using the term black radical tradition. There's a very popular term that's used a lot in the literature by, I call them academics. Intellectual academics go out and talk about the black radical tradition. But this is not what people talk about. People talk about what responses African people have made toward the major problems that we have confronted in society. I'll talk about what the black radical traditionists tried to do and where they're coming from. But right now, I want to let you know that this is, I mean, I'm so happy to be able to give this talk because I think it's been necessary, it's been needed, and also because globally at this point, it is important for us to have the kind of incisive analysis of our situation that will allow us to have an understanding about liberation. So that's why I'm so happy to be able to give this talk today. Let me just tell you that in the American context, and there's also a world context, there's also a context of what happened in the settler colonies like Kenya and South Africa and Zimbabwe. There's also context of what happened in those societies where imperialism colonized entire people, like the West African countries of Nigeria and Ghana and so on. So we can talk about many, many different aspects. But in the American context, the United States of America, I should say, in the United States of America, the African people confronted a society that had basic problems, 4 basic problems. And I'll tell you what these 4 basic problems are. And just happy to see all of you who were here. See also Reverend Joe Williams and the Academy of Life people. Welcome to you, Reverend. One of the outstanding people in this community and one of the great artists in our musical history. We're just so happy to have him here. So, but these four, you got to understand these 4 sources of our radical tradition. The enslavement of Africans, that's number 1. The enslavement of Africans. Think about that. The genocide of the indigenous people. The killing of all the Native Americans that they could. The dispossession of the Mexicans, taking away half of Mexico. And the subservience of women. Those 4 sources of the continuing problem of the American society are the sources for our radical tradition.
Yes, sir.
Remember that. 4 of them. Enslavement of Africans, genocide of the indigenous people, dispossessions of Mexicans, and the subservience of women. Now, there's some other things that also have gone on. But those 4 have provoked in the African American people, and the African people, even before we were Americans. We were not Americans until after 1865. But before we were Americans, as African people, those 4 sources provoked in us a response. We had to respond to that. And those responses on the part of the African people helped to establish our radical tradition. Now, let me tell you something. This is before Marxism. You don't have the Russian Revolution until 1917. We didn't wait around 1917 and say, hey, wait a minute, we got to learn Marxism so that we can respond to the enslavement of Africa. That we got to wait for the Marxists to tell us how to respond to the genocide of the indigenous and the dispossession of the Mexicans and the subservience of women. We can't wait for them.
That's right. That's right.
This is why I tell you, it's so important that this notion, this academic notion, that somehow there's a black radical tradition that's different from the tradition that we have always had to respond and to resist oppression. We've always had that. That's been a part of our history and a part of our culture. So I wonder whether or not radical is just a word used by intellectuals.
Yes, sir.
This just makes you sound smart. Oh, we got a radical, black radical tradition. Wait. Well, do you understand what it is? What it means? Is it simply a term for Marxists? And the reason I ask that is because there have been African American writers, people like Glenn Ford, the late Glenn Ford, who wrote crazy stuff. And that crazy stuff became a part of the verbiage and the vocabulary and the arguments of academic people who went around talking about the black radical tradition, and meaning basically that all these Marxists, they were the real radical tradition. I'm going to show you that's not true. I'm going to show you that's not true. I'm going to talk about certain Marxist intellectuals who were truly valuable to our cause, but we had a radical movement before we met the Marxists, before we even knew them, before we even had any tradition that related to them. There is a notion that Maulana Karenga has called the cow eater response to resistance. And I like this notion because he says that resistance is not just opposition. You're not just opposed to things. It's not just an opposition to an idea, but it's also an affirmation of yourself. And not only an affirmation, but it's also an aspiration. So you got, when you start talking about resistance, you're talking about opposition, you're talking about affirmation, and you're also talking about aspiration. And that's what has happened in the African tradition as long as I can remember and as long as I know. Let me tell you a little bit about the heroic narratives, and then we'll sort of set the tone. We are celebrating now January the 1st, 1804, the Haitian independence. Dessalines then becomes the leader of Haiti in 1804. And the people of Haiti, I happen to be fortunate to eat soup with people in Haiti in 2004, which was a celebration of the bicentennial. And at that time, Aristide was the president of Haiti, and it was a beautiful occasion. And this notion of eating soup is a very common thing for Independence Day in Haiti, if you know anything about Haiti. And what was so important to understand was that during the time of the French rule of Haiti, black people were not allowed to eat soup. The soup was based on squash, a squash that grew throughout the country of Haiti. But it could be prepared by the black cooks, the African cooks could prepare it, but they were not allowed to eat it. Only the white people were allowed to eat this jumu soup. So So one of the characteristic things that Dessalines and the leaders of Haiti did on Independence Day was to say that all the people can have soup. And that's a beautiful response. That's an affirmation. You see what I mean? Not just you oppose what they did, but you affirm yourself as a human being. And this affirmation was what is representative always of the heroic narratives of African people. The same is with Yanga. Yanga was the Congolese who led the first revolt against the Spaniards in Mexico, was led by Congolese in the 1600s. This was during the time that they were bringing Africans to Virginia. Yanga was leading a revolt against the Spaniards in Mexico. And this, again, I'm telling you, this radical response to oppression existed before Marxism. This is the black radical tradition. Then there was Binkos Bioho. In Colombia, same thing. This response to the enslavement of African people in Colombia, in Grand Colombia, the whole area. He says, I'm out of here, and I'm going to take people with me. And that's when they created Palenque, you see. Nanny of Jamaica, the same response. This great woman, warrior, general, commanded her people, no, you fight the British to the end. And not only fight them, you also your own territory. Nanny of Jamaica, who is she? What is she? She is an example of the heroic resistance to oppression. Zumbi of Brazil. This is the same. You can go through Nat Turner. You can go through Harriet Tubman, Charles Dessalines. And Dessalines created the largest slavery revolt in the Americas. His name almost dropped out of history. This is on the German coast, as they used to call it, down in New Orleans. In that whole Louisiana area, hundreds of Africans revolted. This is Charles Dessalines. So I'm saying to you that this resistance, this notion of African people opposing all forms of oppression is not something that's recent and new. And so here's what happens with the people who talk about the black radical tradition. They mix lemons and oranges. And it's okay, because I understand what they're trying to do. The first thing they do is that they always capture Du Bois and say, Du Bois, because he was influenced by the Russian Revolution, he is our example of a radical tradition. So they go and capture Du Bois. But you know, everybody, Du Bois is almost like Jesus Christ. Everybody captured, whether you're Baptist or Methodist or Presbyterian or Episcopalian, you can all say, yeah, that's mine, right? Well, Du Bois is like that. Everybody wants to capture Du Bois. And they capture Du Bois, and Du Bois is the example. But Du Bois has one powerful work that they can rely on and that they always like. And beyond that, they don't. Du Bois. I'll tell you what that is. That's the book, The Black Reconstruction. They like that. They said, that's the one. Because Du Bois makes a beautiful and a profound analysis in that book. Everybody knows he was a brilliant man. There's no question about it. In this book, I think it brings us to the point of understanding that the American Civil War was totally incomplete. It did not do what it should have done. That's why we're in the situation we're in now. One of the reasons we're in the situation we're in now is that if it were truly a revolution, you would not have had the American government pay those people who had resisted the Union to pay them for the property they lost. People don't do that normally in a war like that. They don't give them the rights that allow them to condemn and persecute and kill and destroy other people. You know, most of the situations that we look up to in terms of what happened to black people in this country en masse, many of those things happened after the Civil War. Did you understand that? Tulsa happened in 1921. The Civil War ended in 1865. Why is there still in 1921 an element in the American society that believes that some people are better than others? The Civil War did not do what it should have done. The Union let us down. The North did not do what it should have done. You know what? When the Nazis were defeated in Germany, what do? They said, we have to outlaw all anti-Semitism. You cannot have any anti-Semitism. You cannot have any racism. You cannot even have racist conversations. All that's outlawed in Germany. You can be arrested for racism. You can't be arrested for racism in America, but you can in Germany. Because when the war ended, the idea was that this will not happen again. In the American Civil War, it did not happen that the American government said, okay, we're going to take away the rights of these white Southerners to express, to even talk about the Confederacy. No, they got Confederate flags now. They can fly them anywhere they want to fly. They can do anything they want to do. They can teach it. They can put it on Meta. There's no fact checking or anything. We're free speech. But in societies that have moral value, moral reality, a sense of what is proper and what is improper, you have people who make decisions, and they make the decisions on the basis of what's the best for humanity. That's what you normally have. So Du Bois is important, and I accept Du Bois as important. It's extremely important. But Du Bois was not all that they want him to be. He was, in fact, if anything, he was a strong nationalist and a strong Pan-Africanist. That was his life. In fact, Dr. Jabali and I, we just finished a book on Du Bois. Brother came to me and said, Doc, I'm writing this book on Du Bois. Would you like to work with me? And I said, yes. So we got a book called Reading W.B. Du Bois. Transforming, it's about the critique of the color line, right? And that book comes out in a couple of months. Afrocentric critique of the color line. That's what we did, right? So, but the thing is that what I'm saying to you is that it is extremely important to put Du Bois in a proper place. A. Philip Randolph, they sometimes take him. They also take Marcus Garvey. Now, can you imagine that? They take Du Bois and Marcus Garvey. If you talk to people, Marcus Garvey was definitely in the black radical tradition. The reason they take Marcus Garvey is because he was the most successful resistor in the sense that he had the largest movement ever created by a black person. It was global, it was international, and not only that, he had a concept of African people actually doing for themselves. So you can't avoid him. Nope. Ida B. Wells they normally don't take, but I put her here because Ida B. Wells, if you ask me, the courage that she showed. I mean, at a time when they were lynching black people every week in this country, more and more black people were being killed. Just the murder of black people. Killed about 300 black people in 2 nights. They killed black people in Memphis, 200 people, burned down their houses. They killed black people in Rosewood, Florida. They were just killing black people all over. Ida B. Wells said, you know what? I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to take my pistol, put it in my pocket, in my purse, and I'll ride any train I want to. And then if you're talking about lynching black men, I'm going to not only protest, I'm going to speak loud against this. This was Ida B. Wells Barnett. There should be statues of Ida B. Wells Barnett in every city. All black people should. So there's a statue of Ida B. Wells Barnett. I'm happy that we finally got here in Philadelphia a statue of Harriet Tubman. I was on that commission that brought into existence the statue that we're going to be putting up in a few months down at the hall. That's a wonderful thing, but that's just one. We got numerous heroic people who have done incredible things. James Boggs. You may have never heard of James Boggs. Now, this was a true Marxist. But Boggs was mainly, again, an activist. His idea was political activism. And he believed that as a political activist, that his entire life ought to be devoted to making the lives of the black workers better. James Boggs. And I met him. I was fortunate to meet James Boggs and his wife, Grace Lee, in the 1980s. This was a couple, a powerful political couple, lived in Detroit. And not only lived in Detroit, but worked in Detroit, deep into the Marxist tradition, but were devoted, much like C.L.R. James was in London. C.L.R. James was the same way in London, devoted to the Marxist tradition. But all these people who were what I call theoretical Marxists, like James Boggs and C.L.R. James and Claudia Jones, these people were committed to actually bringing into existence a new form of human reality. That's what they wanted. Why can't we have a better world? This is all they desired, just a better world. But then you had what I call Harold Cruz, who I consider to be one of the most important African American nationalist thinkers. Because Harold Cruz wrote a book called The Crisis of the Negro Intellectual. And in that book, what he said was the Negro intellect, this is in the 1960s, he probably started even earlier. He said that the Negro intellectual is confused because the Negro intellectual has not really dealt with African theory or philosophy. We just acting. We just acting. He said, you're just acting. And this is a problem not just with African American intellectuals or African American people. It's a problem throughout the African world. Travel the African world, whether in South America or in the Caribbean or in Africa, it's the same. The lack of theoretical ideas that are based on African agency. This is a real problem. And when you don't have African agency and you don't have political or philosophical ideas that are grounded in your own historical experiences, you only breed confusion. The people are confused. You are confused. And I see it every day. People have all this confusion. Why you got this confusion? You got this confusion because you do not understand your own history, your own culture. This is a problem. It's a big problem. But Harold Cruz understood that. And one of the interesting involvements with Cruz was that when we created the PhD program at Temple University, we invited Cruz to come. And it was a wonderful meeting. I thought it was a wonderful meeting. It was not as successful as I thought it could be. But he came and he looked at what we were doing, and he seemed like he supported us, and he had a criticism. And the criticism was that we didn't have a strong economic component. So the person who responded to him was a lady named Sharshi McIntyre. Dr. Sharshi McIntyre was a very sharp, brilliant woman, got up and said, Professor Cruz, what you are looking at when you're looking at this department is the precise thing that you said we needed. That what the Sun has created here at Temple is exactly what you said in the crisis of Negro intellectual that we didn't have. So this was the thing. So I thought that was the end of it. That was in 1988 or 89. Cruz died a long time ago. About 3 months ago, I got a call from a brother who said, I'm writing a book on Harold Cruz. I happen to be in the archives at Michigan State University, and I'm looking at his archives. I'm reading him, and I'm looking at old tapes, videos of him. And in that video, he talks about how wonderful what you guys were doing at Temple. And I said, what? He said, yes. He said, he talks about, I said, brother, please send me a copy of that tape. I have the copy of that tape where he says, well, you know what Asante is doing at Temple is different from what we're doing at Michigan State, because at Michigan State, they were trying to create a Center for African American Studies. He said at Temple, they have a department. And they not only have a department, they have a PhD program, and it's based on Afrocentricity. And he was really gushing about our program when, in effect, when he came, it just seemed to me that he didn't really grasp the significance of what we were doing. So I was very happy. It was almost like vacation, when I was able to see his tape. Claudia Jones, who with all the Marxists of her time, but who could ever doubt that one of our greatest was not Malcolm X? And I'm going to go quickly because I want to get into something extremely important, and then I'll be finished. Here are the provocations. The American society has not yet crossed the threshold where it is willing to accept the equality of African people. You know, we have not, we were on the route, we were en route, but we haven't, this country hasn't crossed that threshold. There are hits and misses. There's some places where it's okay and there's some places where it's not. But we have not yet crossed the threshold. And that's the big push in the society. And the great pushback on the reactionary part and the conservative side and the right-wing side is a push against that. But the progressive idea in the American society, how do you push us across the threshold where we have a situation where we say, okay, all people are equal in terms of responsibilities, accountability, and in terms of obligations and rights. See, there's no organized force in America that's capable of changing the social structure of the country. I don't know one organized force that could change it in a progressive way. Because that's what we keep waiting for. Those of us who are activists, we know we have to act every day. And even if we change one person, one institution at a time, that's what we have to do. But there's no organized force that is capable of changing the social structure of America. If you look at the institutions of an American society, right now, there's evidence of something else, that they're all supporting a reactionary position. I heard the other day that Walmart and McDonald's, they're all saying, well, we're not going to do diversity, equity, and inclusion anymore. That we out of that business. You see? But that because there is no organized force that is capable of saying to them, you can't do that. The evidence is that the economic forces are doubling down on maintaining a notion of white supremacy in the American society. That's what the evidence suggests to me. And I may be wrong, but that's what it looks like. And you look at the commonalities that have existed. We've had in the past colonialism and imperialism. We had in South Africa apartheid and separation. In America, we have white supremacy and racist ethics. The ethics based fundamentally on the idea of race. In fact, one of the great dangers and fears of the Elon Musk and Donald Trump and Bannon coalition is that what is actually taking place is an attempt to bring into existence a strong, fundamental, reactionary force that will continue to highlight white racial supremacy. Now, let me just say this about Marxism and capitalism, because I don't want you to think that I'm dismissing the Marxists outright, because Marxists normally dismiss the economic aspects of the question in favor of purely political issues. So they normally say, well, you know what? Let's not talk anything unless to change the reality of the capitalists in this society. And so what some fundamentalists say, they're mistaken by saying that Africans should not participate in what they call internal capitalism economy, and we've had this discussion at the universities where people say, well, let's not even participate in the system. Wait a minute, you're in the system. What you talking about? You're not going to participate in the system? Then you'll be eaten up in the system. You can't say it's just like. And then of course you had many people doing that during the last political election. Well, I'm not going to participate at all. Well, wait a minute. You did participate. By not participating, you participated. So you can't. Basically, what has happened is that if we are in this society, then what we've got to do is to continue our resistance and our opposition to oppression, and we've got to fight on every level. The economic level, there are people who say, well, the black bourgeoisie has no right to become capitalist. Wait a minute. We live in a capitalist society. So you won't even have a black bourgeoisie if you don't participate in the society. And here, let me go further on this, because some people, I know people out there right now questioning me on this and saying, well, wow, what is he talking about, the black bourgeoisie? You know what? All revolutions are directed by the bourgeoisie. You can't, I've studied revolution after revolution, and all the people who lead them. I just came from Cuba. Who led the Cuban Revolution? Fidel. He was a medical doctor. Che Guevara. Who are the people? What? Yes. So I'm just saying, direct. So you go to Cabral in Guinea, Agostinho Neto in Angola, Mugabe in Zimbabwe. They are the people who have a consciousness that has been developed by being in the global world. These are normally your bourgeoisie. These are your people who are middle class, as you want to say. Those are the people who come to consciousness. Now, it's not that the poor don't come to consciousness. They do. But they don't normally have the means to get engaged as activists. Bois could be engaged as activists because he was a part of the middle class, you see. So these are nuanced questions. You know, there's a whole kind of joy sometimes in people's thinking when they say, well, you know what, really, the poor, that's going to lead the revolution. I've not seen that. And I've looked for it everywhere. And you know why I've looked for it? Because I'm a peasant. I come from a peasant family. 15 brothers and sisters, cotton pickers from Georgia, rural people, close to the soil. Didn't have time to be thinking about anything except how are we going to get our next meal. That's what poor people think about. Where am I going to sleep? Am I going to borrow some flour from Mrs. Jones next door? Where do we get sugar from? Those are the issues. And so but you got to understand that we cannot romanticize this. And I'm saying this because I'm going to give all of us a charge. But before I give this charge, let me say this. Booker T and WB. Booker T and WB, this was very interesting. What we normally know about Booker T. Washington and W.B. Du Bois, a lot of it came from Herbert Aptheker. And that's not bad, except that Aptheker was definitely a Marxist, and Aptheker definitely loved Du Bois and didn't like Washington. And so what we normally read, when we read about it, we said, and this is one of the lines that Aptheker wrote. He says, Booker T. Washington accepted a second-class status of Africans, while Du Bois sought to create a political response through activism. Washington just accepted a second-class status. Wait a minute. I don't think that's true. In fact, have anybody here ever been to Tuskegee? Okay. Tuskegee University is one of the most impressive sites in Black America. You go there, you are shocked. Booker T. Washington, this is his vision. Now, yes, Du Bois had great vision, and we got the NAACP with Du Bois. But we got Tuskegee with Washington. You can't make, don't down Washington. Understand that what Washington was dealing with was different than what Du Bois was dealing with. Du Bois was a northerner, born in Massachusetts. Washington was a southerner, and he spent his life in the South dealing with white racists. Here's a whole different reality. You up north in Boston and Philadelphia, talking about white supremacy and all that kind of stuff. But in Georgia, well, you can talk about it. The realities are different, you see. And he understood that. Washington understood that. And I think that those of us who sometimes interpret Washington and Du Bois, we don't quite get that. We don't understand that. So now, the 5 big organizations. The NAACP, you may have heard of it. And I'm talking about I'm still talking about the radical tradition. And I'm talking about what my whole aim tonight is, how do we revitalize it? We had the NAACP, we had the Student Violence Coordinating Committee, which I was a member of. We had the Urban League, we had the Congress of Racial Equality, and we had the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Those were the 5, what we used to call the Big 5. And those Big 5 organizations were very powerful in the 1950s and 60s. Where are they today? Those were the organizations. And the people who led them were courageous. They were giants. They were magnificent people who were always fighting. We were on the same road to how do we get over that threshold. That's what they were fighting for. I know that that's what our organization, SNCC, was fighting for, and Whitney Young and those people with the Urban League was the same. Roy Wilkins was the same. John Lewis with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating. All these people, people were very, very clear. They understood what we had to do. Those were called the Big 5 organizations in the black community. And then we can talk about what happened to them, but that's another. And then we had the revolt of the sons and daughters of Malcolm and Martin in the 60s. The children of Martin Luther King Jr. But I'm saying the children, not his biological children, the intellectual activist children, the children of Malcolm X. We had local affiliates of these groups. We had the creation of the Black Panther Party. We had the creation of the US organization, and we had their affiliates. We had other organizations that were created, revolutionary organizations right here. RAM was here, Revolutionary Action Movement. We had many, many movements. That's what we had. Where are those movements? What happened to us? What's the thing? So here's what the current conditions are. I'm bringing this close to a close. Here's what we got. These are our current conditions. We have social media entrepreneurs. That's big. I'm telling you, the African American presence on social media is huge. And it has made many African American people a lot of money. That part is useful because what happens with social media and with media itself now is that you don't have to show your face and start a business. And so our businesses have ballooned, and the number of people who have created businesses is continuing every day. I got all kinds of people in my family, got all kinds of businesses, side businesses. They're making things and creating things and selling things. That's part of it now. You know, I look around, my nieces got stuff going on. My granddaughter's got stuff going on. Oh, wow, people are doing things. We couldn't do that before. Because if we went to get a loan from a bank, if we showed our face, it was difficult. It was hard to break through, to get into business. But social media got you in business. Then there's artificial intelligence. You don't know what's real. I mean, we sitting right here now. You don't know whether we're real or not. The only way I know that we're real is that I touch this guy right here. Otherwise, you don't know. They got all kinds of stuff going on. I'm telling you, it's a rough stuff. And then you got the private capture of state institutions. Rich people captured our institutions. Musk owns America's space program. Can you imagine? Look at. We don't know who owns the Supreme Court, but somebody owns it. Your institutions have been captured by private interests. State. I mean, they've been trying to get the post office. And they're going to eventually, under Trump, they'll probably get the post office. Too many black people work at the post office anyway. All these black people work at the post office. All right, we got to get the post office. Somebody got to take it over. And that's what they did with, they had all kinds of things like FedEx and all this stuff started to try to deal with that post office. Post office used to be really a powerful thing. They just siphon off pieces of it, you see. But it's the state, it's the private capture of state institutions that we're in. And then what we need, and I think we're developing, is a conscious middle class. A conscious middle class. A group of professionals that are conscious. This is something that we have lacked. I'm telling you that's what Harold Cruz in the 1960s was saying. He talked about the so-called Negro intellectuals, but he was also talking about our middle class was not conscious. You know this and I know this. We may not have a whole lot of billionaires, but we got a lot of people in the African American community, enough through all the entertainers and athletes and professional people, lawyers and doctors with considerable means, but they don't have African consciousness. I remember a brother told me once, he said, I got 100 pairs of shoes. He was a basketball player in a city that I used to live in. He said, I got 100 pairs of shoes. I said, brother, you can't wear 100 pairs of shoes. What are you doing 100 pairs of shoes? They had you remember Mike Tyson? He was buying his golden bathroom with Italian marble. I mean, the thinking is not for Africa at all. Wouldn't it be safe to say, man, I had the most wonderful place with African art and African culture. I'm recognizing my ancestors, my African American. No. We don't have yet the real consciousness among our professionals. Now, here's what we must do, and then I'll be finished. This is the last slide. We have to create 100,000, listen to this carefully. You have to, when I say we, I'm talking about you too. We have to create 100,000 Afrocentric organizations. That's not a lot. With 40 million people, 100,000 Afrocentric organizations. They could be clubs, they could be schools, They could be reading groups. I would love to see 100,000 organizations created within the next 4 years. This can be done. You can do this. You have done things like this. The next is we have to revive the Afrocentric school movement. You got to revive the Afrocentric school movement. It was one of our most brilliant innovations. And why would we let it die? Do you think we thought that with Obama we would have a post-racial society and we would all be in paradise and be there? No. No. We got to revive the Afrocentric school movement. And that means each one of us, and those of us who are professionals or middle class, we have got to be engaged and involved. If you don't know one, you help to create one. And if you know one, support it. Amen. Make a contribution. You can make a contribution, $100 a month, Lotus Academy. You can do that. But we've got to revive that movement. Professional people, business owners, need to hire one or two other people. You can hire. If you're a lawyer, you got to have a side business. And that side business, you hire a couple of people. You can afford to do it as a lawyer. You can afford to do it as an accountant. You can start a restaurant. You're an accountant, but start a restaurant. Do something. You can do this. And this takes the dependence off of the state. It is on you and your generosity for your community. You have to attend school board and sit. Be present. Show up. Because we stopped showing up. We used to show up with, placards and protests. Now just show up. Support businesses in our community. You got to do that. If you can't, if Walmart says that they're going to not do diversity and equity and inclusion, then Costco says that they will do DEI. You have to make those kind of judgments. People make those judgments. Write blogs on the social media encouraging self-help. You have to do that. You got to do that. Just encourage other people to do self-help. Donate to progressive politicians. If you have progressive politicians, donate to those progressive politicians. That's important. Restart the private bookstore movement. The private bookstore movement, restore it, restart it. If you need some books, I'll donate some. Start that movement. Create tea and coffee shops for poetry readings. We used to be great poets. We still are. But nobody hears us. And maybe we should even have some poetry nights here. But we've got to restart the consciousness. That's how we revitalize the radical tradition. And we always have to form alliances with progressive people. We have to form those alliances because our struggle is just as Boggs, one of the things Boggs said that was really important, that it is not historical materialism that is the key to human progress. It is what he called dialectical humanism. And what he meant by that is making people more human. And that is the Afrocentric way. Asante Sana, thank you very much. So I will take, if there are questions, we can take a few.
You need me to do the mic?
Yes, would you do the mic, Josh? Sorry. Anybody? Okay, Robin. Okay, there's several.
Great lecture, Dr. Great lecture.
Thank you.
Learned something today. You mentioned the Big Five.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And I was wondering, did you include the Nation of Islam? And if you didn't, why didn't you include the Nation of Islam?
That's a very good point. No, I didn't include it because the Nation of Islam is a religious organization, at least the way I saw it. But the Nation of Islam was extremely important. You're right. If I do this lecture again, I have got to put the nation in there. I didn't put the nation in there for the Big Five because the Big Five were the group that brought into existence the 1963 the and those were the organizations that were gathered in Washington D.C. at the Lincoln Memorial, and they call them Five. But you're right. The Nation of Islam is a significant organization, particularly for what was called at the time the moral development of African people, and because I have many friends who were members of the nation. In fact, a former wife of mine was a member of the nation, and and they for a while, and they were in the nation because the nation was about morality and so forth. But that's a good question. Next question. Well, as far as we go, right? Well, I think.
I want to thank God for being here and being here with my unofficial adopted son, Dr. Smith.
Yes.
Some of the things we're doing.
Thank you, Brother Mangalisa.
Some of the things we're doing, it's like eating pork don't mean nothing.
Yes.
So I'm just thanking God that what you're doing. I want to encourage you. What you're doing in the church language, you would say all of us. You say when I walked in, we're all in the same, but we're just beggars trying to tell other beggars where the bread line is located. And we better get that, so this has been encouraging to me to keep going.
Thank you, sir.
I'm 86 now, and man, I've been trying a long time to wake folks and all that other stuff, but you got to keep going.
That's right. Thank you very much. Well,
So
we intend to keep going. Thank you very much.
Thank you, brother. I think you did an excellent job of putting this together in terms of a broad scope of all the things been happening to us historically.
Yes, sir.
One of the questions I have for you is the country was founded by business people.
Yes,
you
sir.
go down to the Constitution Center, they're all merchants and large farmers. So the country was founded by business people in the interest of business people. They didn't directly control the government the way we're talking about it today.
That's right.
Right, but back then they had indirect control, and they maintained that throughout the years.
I think it's a brilliant point. I think it's true. I mean, that was based fundamentally on the merchants. And basically, that's how, and of course, the property people.
Right.
And
Exactly.
and the more property you own, the more money you had, and the more capability you had. And the people who had property was not necessarily your smartest people. And it's also the case today. Because you got money or property doesn't mean that you're the brightest people. And so this society was based on that. One of the things, and I pointed this out in another lecture, and I found this out when I was in Brazil. One of the ways that the Brazilians did this same business as the white Americans, the way the Portuguese did, when you came in as a colonist into Brazil, certain families control what they call certain contracts, certain commissions. So, for example, if you're a D'Souza, then maybe you control all shipping. If you are a Ferreira, maybe your family controls all mining. So in Brazil today, even till this day, those families that were given those, what they call concessions, that's the word I was looking for, given those concessions still exist. And so it's very hard for black Brazilians to have anything. You can work for some of these people, but you don't control the concessions have already been given to those families. And in this country, what was given, remember, we didn't get free for the majority of us until 1865. But by 1865, you already had what they call the 49ers. That is 1849, the white people went to California to get gold. And the ones who didn't get gold also got land and property during the time that we were still enslaved. So not only did they have that advantage of owning the whole country and owning the land, but during that period, we were allowed access, you see? So when you look at the African American population, what we've done and what we have achieved, phenomenal. So that's why I know we can do this.
One last question.
For 4 years, yeah, we can do this.
Can you espouse a little bit on the women's organizations that were part and parcel to the Big Five, as well as those that came after? Like
There's a very good, I'm glad you mentioned that. Because people normally think that, first of all these organizations had alliances with their women group. In fact, our group, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, Ella Baker was the one who founded our organization. A woman created the SNCC organization. And, but then before that, you had people like Mary Claude Bethune, and you had Dorothy Height for a long time with the National Association of Negro Women. These organizations were extremely valuable, and so were the organizations, these women organizations that supported Du Bois in those Pan-African Congresses. Most people don't realize that on one of the Congresses, I can't remember was it the second or third, he was almost not going to do it, and a group of women said, yes, you're going to do it, and we got the money, we're going to back you up to do it. So no, women have always been integral to our movement. If it were not for women, we would not be free. Yeah. Okay.
Dr. Asante,
yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
I think another piece that's missing
Yes.
is to incorporate and energize the black churches,
Yes.
the religions,
Yes.
because Martin Luther King came from that.
Yes.
And people within it felt that they were supposed to work and make change even though they are praying. So we need to do that again.
I think you're right, and the reason that existed then was because we had preachers who also, now this gets me probably into a little difficulty here. They were not out for personal aggrandizement, and they were not out just for prosperity. Those preachers were out to help deliver and liberate black people. And so they created a consciousness in their organizations and among their congregants and the members of those churches that allowed them to have a great sense of African cultural consciousness. And that was the power of that organization, those organizations. But you're right. The church was a major part. There were some churches that were also antagonistic to it. I grew up in one. Our church didn't like Martin Luther King Jr. or Malcolm X.
Wow.
They around here, what do my preachers say? They're preaching social gospel. All my preacher wanted to do is go to heaven. and so he was about what's going on the earth. You see, so the church has been both a supporter and a powerful engine, and has also been a waiter. Okay. Yes.
Yes. Good afternoon, I'm Dr. Asante.
Yes.
So when you was pointing out to what's happening currently, one of the things you said about was the private industries taking over state institutions and so forth. And yes, because it was interesting that you mentioned the post office that that Trump is going to try to take that next. And yes, because by the way, I work for the city government myself, the city of Philadelphia, and and I do have concerns about our futures being by that the majority of workers, because the majority of the black middle class is in government.
Sure.
Government opportunities. Open those doors for us.
Sure.
Okay. So, but what do you think the masses of us need to do to fight back against this grab from these multi-billionaires and so forth?
You have asked a very powerful question, and that's for the reason that Trump ran. You remember, he said that there was a deep state, and what he meant by deep state was that there were people in civil service and people in government service who have been there for many years, been working in those organizations, and many of them are African American people who have been. I will never forget, even me as a person, when I first visited Washington, D.C., and went to the Department of Education, and then once I visited the State Department, and I saw so many black people working in those offices, and it was amazing to me because I didn't even realize that the building of the black middle class in Virginia, was that Prince George's County, one of those counties, that middle class was all civil servants working for the U.S. government. Well, what Trump has said is that seeing all of that looks like a deep state, and we've got to figure out how to get rid of the deep state, because for him, they say they're liberals. We're all black people. We're all liberals in there. We all this and that. So, but of course, it's a stupid kind of thing. All these people are career civil servants, and they have got their promotions through merit and everything. But what we need to do to fight against it is that we've got to be politically astute, and we've got to be politically conscious. And next time, people tell us that we don't need to participate, because if you let people tell you you don't need to participate, then you will lose again. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. So I want to thank you. One more. Okay. Oh, yes. All right. Okay. Sorry. One more.
Yes, because one thing I wanted to say was too. Now in a lot of those public positions,
yes.
A lot of us are like in unions because I'm in Aspen District Council 47, and we was doing canvassing during this recent presidential campaign.
Yes, sir.
And now most of the members that I had to talk with, said they were supporting Kamala Harris, but come to find out, some of the union members voted for Donald Trump, and then they also said too that that 54% of 57% of workers that don't have a college degree voted for Trump, but 54% that had a college degree voted for Kamala. Like,
Well,
it's really interesting.
They did a good job of false information. I mean, there's a whole lot of false information out there, and so really crazy. So no, but we're good. We're smart enough to know what to do. Like that, yes.
I commend you on your lecture today.
Thank you.
And I just basically a comment. You keep, don't let someone throw under the bus how plans and ideas that will help us to continue to move forward.
Yes.
And your organization really steps up on that.
Thank you so much. But thank you. I appreciate that very much. That's what we've always tried to do. The Maleficenti Asante Institute is devoted to it, and we're looking forward to seeing you on March the 8th also for the Ridley Symposium. Thank you so much for coming, and Dr. Jabali is going to close us out, and we will be ready for anything. Oh, yes, go ahead. Yes.
Did I turn it on? Hello.
Go, you want to? Oh, go ahead.
Is it on? Okay. As a mental health professional,
Yes.
For many individuals, I find that we have been psychologically conditioned to disassociate research